2, which is actually part 20. Today's part 19 and 20. And just so you know, we'll try to get it up on the eriktology page, but for temporarily, we put the last week's video up on a YouTube page called Erik Bissell, ERIK BISSELL, space between 9183 is, I think, the number. Anyway, so here part 20. Now, we're going to look at this verse in Ezekiel 39:1. So if you look in the dictionary, the word Nun, Shin, Yod, Aleph, Nasia, means priest. I mean, a prince. Could be a priest. It's a speaker. Somebody lifted up, a celebrity. Hey, look, this guy, listen. So it's somebody raised up, because the word Nun, Shin, Aleph, like NASA, means lift up and carry. But it also means to be married. And so you have this kind of this ritual protocol thing that I don't know where it comes from, probably some pagan ritual. But, you know, you get married and the husband, the groom, picks up and he carries his bride over the threshold. Why? That's just what you do. It's just custom. Well, where'd it come from? The word to get married is Nun Shin. Nun Shin, I think Nun Shin Yod Hey is the word for wife, womanly. Nun Shin Yod means to lift up. Well, Nun can be the prefix, and so you in the Ten Commandments, where he says, nobody better take the name of Yahweh your Elohim in vain. He will not hold him guiltless who picks up and carries his name and turns it into vanity. Well, the word vanity there is spelled Shin Aleph and also Shin Vav Aleph. Well, if the Aleph is pronounced as an A, then Shin Vav Aleph would be Shua. And I heard somebody once reprimand me for saying, do not call his name Yeshua, because the phrase, the phonetic Shua, means vanity. And you don't want to say Yahshua, you're saying Yah's name is vanity. That's auditory. If you look at the spelling of the word, it's not Shin Aleph or Shin Vav Aleph, it's Shin Ayin or even Shin Vav Ayin. So if you say Yeshua with a Ayin and you pronounce the Ayin like an Aleph, that's where the confusion is. So just so people know, the Ayin is the English equivalent of the letter O, which is the Greek letter Omicron, not Omega. Lou White's book has it as the Omega. No, the Omega is one of the last 5 letters added to the Greek alphabet. The Ayin, or the Latin English letter O, is the Greek letter Omicron. And the Ayin can be taken as a vowel, meaning it can be expressed as an A, an E, an I, an O, or a U. I've seen different words where it seems to be taking all those vowels, or guttural, a slight guttural in the back of your throat, like you're a cat coughing up a hairball. That's the phonetic of the letter Ayin. It's written as a capital G, lowercase h, GH. Anyway, so Yahshua, if it's written with an Ayin, does not mean to be rendered vain and void and worthless. Shin Vav Aleph does mean that. So wait a minute, this is Nun Shin Yod Aleph. So Shin Yod Aleph is, if Yods and Vavs are like these wild cards, does that mean vain, worthless, empty? It can. But it can mean to lift something up. Well, you'll see in the dictionary, it means also forgetfulness or womanly. Wait a minute, why are we equating the feminine gender to forgetfulness? Where does that come from? I could try to guess or make up stories, but that's just what's in the dictionary. If I look at Nun Shin Aleph in Klein's dictionary, it also means to claim a debt. To claim a debt. So the female is put in a certain position, biblically, compared to the male, where if she makes a vow, well, then she has to pay her vow. She has to keep her vow. But if there's a husband or a father around that hears it and says, no, I nullify that vow. Don't listen to what she said. What? Okay, well, the man's voice, her husband or father, overrides the woman's voice. That was from ancient culture for whatever reason. Okay. But if you marry somebody and she has that debt, the man incurs the debt. or somebody else can come to the man to claim the debt. So it all has to do with cultural relationship between men and women, you could say. That has something to do with Nun Yod Shin Aleph. It also means, Nun Shin Aleph also literally means to deceive or beguile or impose a vanity. To deceive or beguile. What's that got to do with a woman? Wait a minute. That reminds me of a story in the Garden of Eden. Adam ate of the fruit. Yahweh shows up and says, hey, what are you doing? We're naked. We're hiding. Who told you were naked? Did you eat of that fruit? That woman, by golly, she coerced me to eat of that fruit, and I ate it, and now we're hiding in the bushes. Interesting, for what it's worth, is that they used fig leaves to make some clothing for themselves, but the word fig in Hebrew is literally the exact same word that means excuses. Excuses. It's also pretext for a quarrel. Well, why did Elohim stick that tree in the garden as a pretext for a quarrel? Oh, he knew a quarrel was coming one of these days. He stuck that tree there because if there's going to be a combat, if there's going to be a fight, if there's going to be an issue, it's going to be about that tree. I'm going to tell you not to eat it, and I know darn well one of these days somebody's going to eat it, and then we're going to have a conflict. That's the issue. Did you eat that tree? I told you not to eat the tree. Why do you stick the freaking tree in the garden? Get it out of here. No, there's going to be a quarrel, and that's going to be the issue. He had it all set up. Sooner or later, that dang tree. So he asked the woman, did you indeed coerce your husband to eat? Well, hey, the serpent beguiled me. Beguiled, deceived. Was it a deception or was it a bamboozling? Enchantment. Okay, now we're trying to find the right verb, adjective, what fits in exactly what happened. But the thing happened. And all that's wrapped around this word, Nun Shin Yod Aleph, which is simply translated prince. Is it prince, or is it to lift something up? Speaker, celebrity. Nun Shin Vav Aleph means married. Claim a debt, deceive, beguile, impose a vanity. What's this word mean? Let's move on. Resh Aleph Shin, means head. So he's the prince, the head of Meshach and Tubal. Wait a minute. Rosh doesn't just mean head. It means foundation, but it also means pinnacle and summit. It's not just the object on top of your neck, your head, but it means first order, primordial. Like the first story in the Bible is about the Garden of Eden. Well, after creation, there's creation, then the Garden of Eden. Genesis chapter 2. That's Rosh. But it's the story about the woman, about the beguiling and the relationship between the woman married to the man, that married being not a ceremony, but the description of the relationship. Well, the description of the relationship is like between Aleph and Bet, which is gimmeling. So there's something about the nature of the relationship between the woman and the serpent, between the woman and Adam, the man, between all of them and Elohim, between the tree that was stuck there to impose a quarrel, and then for them to find excuses. All this is wrapped up in Nun Shin Yod Aleph, Resh Aleph Shin. It's invoking this story. But then you look at Mem Shin Kaf, Meshach and Tubal. Yeah, but Mem Shin is where we get the word mush, which means to touch or feel. Shin Kaf can be just the suffix, your feeling, your Mem Shin. Mem could be the prefix of Shin Kaf. Shin Kaf means thorn, barb, spear, splinter, booth, that's where you get the word sakot, booth, enclosure, but it means look or see. Shin Kaf Tav, sakot, can mean to listen. So that's like these two hands holding together, interlaced like this booth built with branches and sticks. Barb of a spear. Oh, look out for that. Look out for that thorn. It's got a sharp thing sticking out. Shin Kaf, now a derivative, Shin Kaf Yod Hey, means beautiful to look upon. Delightful imagery. The tree looked good. The fruit of the tree looked good to Adam and Hua, so they ate it. Mem Shin Kaf means to take possession by dragging or pulling. the curse imposed on that action of eating from that tree, they took out their hand, they grabbed the fruit, they pulled it towards themselves and took a bite. They took possession volitionally by that action. They did it. Nobody else stuffed it in their mouth. So mem shin kaf, to take possession, also to prolong, delay, stretch out. The word for mortgage, to draw something out. You're going to pay for 30 years for this house. So it's like, now it's yours. Why? Because I kept making consistent payments for 30 years. Same concept. But mash, to massage, to draw out. Mem shin hey is the word for Moshe, or the Moses. Mem shin vav hey means to make equal. To make equal. That's a mathematical concept. And then this word tabal, vav tav bet lamed, and tubal. Well, tav bet lamed means the world. Is it a location, a city, a country called Tubal? But it means the world. It also means to spice. Well, if you have food and somebody says, you got some salt or some pepper, you're adding to it. You have some other condiments, kind of dump some ketchup, some barbecue sauce, some hollandaise. It also means the confusion of the natural order. It's a mixture. To spice something up is Tubal. So what's this saying? If I can now apply my way of reading this, I can say, hey, Gog, have you forgotten the story from the beginning? Because remember, Nun Shin Yod, it means forgetfulness. How the woman was deceived, beguiled, led astray, that was the beginning of the story, the deception of the woman. By looking at the beautiful, delightful, the spicy, like a fish hook, a rat trap, waiting to catch you, thus ensnaring the whole world with confusion, a distortion of order, mixture. Well, that's what happened in the garden. The whole world got tuballed because Adam and Hua meshached. The story of the Nasiya Rosh. You reached out your hand to take what you saw, what you were instructed by Elohim not to consume. There's this phrase, pas de deux. Maybe bad phonetics. It's French. It means the dance of two. So there's a musical thing called pas de deux. You could do sculpture, you could do art, which is a pas de deux. This dance of two. It's like Solomon even wrote. He says, "Wow, there's four of these most incredible mysteries on the face of the earth. How does a ship sail the ocean with the winds and the turning of the sails and how does a snake crawl on a rock? The way of a man with a maid. It's just fascinating. Let's hear some stories. Let's see some movies. Let's just observe some soap operas of this dynamic, of this pas de deux. Adam and Hua, Israel and Elohim. I mean, Solomon, in all his wisdom, was saying, hey, this human mind is just fascinated with the dynamics, the gimmeling of Alef and Bet. It's plugged into our psyche. We can't help it. That's why we're fascinated by romance stories and wars, which is another extreme of the conflict. Bet Magog, Bet Mem Gimel Vav Gimel. Bet Mem literally means stage directing, theater. How do you set this whole thing up? Gimel and Gimel can mean imagine, and it also means logical. So you could say Magog can be stage directed. This is what it can literally mean. Imagine the logical correction of a text. Because Gimel has to do with correcting a text logically. Everything that I just tried to do here for the last hour and a quarter is take the Hebrew alphabet as a text that we were told means something in English, whether it's King James or whether it's Tyndale or whether it's Greek or Latin or the rabbinical translation of I'm against you, Gog, prince and head of Meshach and Tubal, and say there's another way to read this. And what it's saying, I can read into this and saying, have you forgotten the story from the beginning? Go back and read Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden. The woman was deceived, beguiled, led astray by looking at the beautiful, delightful, spicy But it's like a fish hook. It's looking good on a reason for a reason. It's to get you to take it, like putting cheese in a rat trap. It's waiting to catch you. For Elohim to say to Cain, sin is lurking at the door, waiting to catch you. But Cain, if you just have a good attitude and do the right thing, it has no power over you. See, some people say, and I know there's a big conflict, and they'll say, oh man, in the garden there, that wasn't a fruit on a tree. That was having a physical sexual engagement with the serpent, and both Adam and Hua both did. And so Eve conceived, Hua conceived and gave birth to Cain, and then also to Abel, and these were twins, but they were two different parentage. So Cain was mixed evil's demon spawn, demon seed. He was a reptilian. He was lizard. Cain was half lizard. But see, Elohim didn't say, damn you, Cain. You're no good. You're not what I created. You're reptilian. He said, Cain, don't you know that if you do the right thing, everything's fine? Just do what I said. So I don't personally believe that Cain was lizard spawn. I see why they're saying that. If you go back to that story, and it's like, well, who came up with this thing, mixed seed? And it's like, the Jews have been thinking about this for centuries. It goes way back. Whoever looks at the story can see that. So the question is, how does this work? But see, also I can look at the meaning of the word Gog and the derivatives, and it means melt it down, stir it with a ladle, magic, pour it into a mold regarding direction and protection. It's like, now that's starting to talk like the golden calf story as soon as they got out of Egypt. That was back at the beginning too. As soon as they got out of Egypt, they used this magic melting down, pouring out, here's this molded image. No, he said, don't do that. So I can, like a synonym, I can pull in these stories and say, what does that have to do with Gog? Well, then you go back into the story and say, Ezekiel 38 and 39, he says, he's going to bring us back into the land. That's what he said he's going to do. Hasn't happened yet. Okay, so he's going to bring us back into the land. And the land, which has been also barren all these centuries, Yahweh's going to say, okay, you're allowed to produce. And the land is going to go, whoa, yeah. And the land wants to produce. The land wants its people walking on it. It's a strange sort of consciousness, kind of, sort of. But the land is going to go like gangbusters, man. It's going to produce wheat, and it's going to produce crops, and the trees are going to pump out fruit like crazy, and it's going to probably feed the world. Why? Well, like we said last week, it goes back to saying Ezekiel 37, Ayin Zadi, those two sticks got to become one. What's the stick? An Ayin Zadi. Well, Nun Ayin Vav Zadi means inherent, the intrinsic responsibility for Yehuda and Ephraim and all their associates to finally come to the same Ayin Zadi, that the responsibility of Israel is to glorify the Shem of Yahuwah. That's Ayin Zadi. And the two become one in his hand. Well, that has to happen first. So let me just plug into the Christian and Jew model. The Christians got to realize that the Torah of the Jews is still the only thing that matters. It's real. It's valid. What was nailed to the cross was the curse of the law, which is death. Whoever sins will die. That curse was nailed to the cross. Not the law. That's complete corruption, which is why the Jews can't go along with JC being the real Messiah, because JC represents the paradigm of thought, the doctrine that says there ain't no Torah. There's no law. We don't have to do what he said. That's a lie. That's not true. So as long as there's anybody in the family of the 12 tribes of Israel believing that the law is done away with, there can't be the two sticks coming back together. But to say this man, this Yahusha that walked the earth 2,000 years ago, that guy that the gospel narrative is about, he is Mashiach. Mashiach literally means the mush, the tangible communication. He's this Alef Tov in the human flesh. He's this word of this 22-letter alphabet, and everything that in the narrative story and everything that it's about, boom, that's him. That's the guy who was crucified and rose from the dead The Jews got to see that's him. Well, they don't, but they need to. So this event of the two sticks becoming one, I see, is still in front of us. And once it is reconciled, and the family, the 12 tribes, can become reunified as one stick, one ayin zadi, a singular, oh, the eyeball blossoms, ayin zadi. Oh, I see it, I get it. Oh, man, what have we done for all these years? That ayin zadi. Then he can bring us back to the land. Then the land can proliferate, and then he can put the hook in the jaw. Why? When I say put a hook in the jaw, what does that mean? Yeah, like a fish hook in your cheek? No, it's when you were taken over by another enemy, they take a big iron, jam it right in here in the soft place, and you're going wherever they're pulling. That kind of hook in your jaw. If you resist, you'll get your lower jawbone ripped out of your face. But how are they going to do that? How's he going to do that? Well, we talked about this last week. Remember what he did to Pharaoh. 10 plagues, Pharaoh let the people go. Then Pharaoh's counselors come up to him and says, are you nuts? You just let these guys go. This is our workforce. We can't do anything. Look, look around. The animals are dead. The crops are ruined. Everything's been pelted with hail and wrecked. Who's going to rebuild this stuff? I'm not. Where are you going to find somebody else? You just let the slave force go. What? That's right. You better go get them. So he goes to get them and then wipes them out in the Sea of Reeds. And that's what he's going to do with this whole horde of invading army in Ezekiel 38 and 39. Next week, we're going to talk about something in Ezekiel 43, but I'm going to bring something up right here. If you look at after Ezekiel 39, if you look at Ezekiel 40, 41, 42, he's talking about this temple, and it's like, what's all that about? But then he bumps into this certain verse. I made a note here in the notes. One other thing, I think there's a guy named Rodin, sculptor, and he had these two people, wrapped up in some kind of an embrace where you can't tell which arm is whose, and that's kind of like this pod I do, where you can't tell me from you. And that's like Yeshua at the Garden of Gethsemane, where he says, he's praying to his father, like there's some cartoon where he says, hey, Dad, it's me, you. It's like, what? What does that even mean? What does that even mean? It's because this dynamic of the relationship between Yahusha and his father he's not the same, he's different, but he says they're echad. So there's something about the echadness between the Alef and Bet, but Alef isn't Bet, and Bet isn't Alef, but Bet is in Alef. But then he prays that we would be in them the same way. Does that mean we're turning into God and Elohim? No, it's like whatever he built is a confusing thing, so we shouldn't get mad at each other for being confused. He designed it that way. But I'm saying it's like this interesting phrase, this sculpture. But this whole idea that there's this temple, and that's not the temple that they're trying to build in Jerusalem right now. But what is that? If I look back at the story with Gog, and it has to do with correcting a text, logical, to become literally gimel gimel. If I look at all these definitions, it means to become great, high, lofty, but it's also misled and error. Adam and Hua were the highest life form, you might say, on the planet, but they were misled by error. It has to do with unintentional sin, but it has to do with direction and protection. You'll find those words. Gog also has to do with fantasize, ponder, magic, cause to shine. Interesting thing, Gimel Aleph Yod, pronounced guy, also means pride, also means variegated colors. So this whole idea that you have the word gay pride, and a variegated rainbow of colors, that's all Hebrew. That's where they come up with that stuff. It's also a wine press. Anyway, if you, I'm gonna change course here real quick. So I did this picture, and there's a reason here. Just a little bird. It says Paleo Songbird. That's my wife's name on Facebook, Paleo Songbird, Google. And here, the words that say Paleo Songbird is Pe Lamed Aleph Vav, Paleo, Zadi Pe Vav Resh, Zipur, which is songbird, like Moshe's wife was Zipporah, and then Zimra. Well, Zimmer is to sing or to play music, Paleo Songbird. But like what we just did, what does that also mean? Paleo, Zipur, and Zimra. But let me ask a question. If there was one thing that mattered, what is it? Use your imagination. Take a moment. What matters? Now, in chemistry, you might say there's this concept that there's a nucleus of an atom and there's this electron swarm all around it. And whether it's in a certain orbit like they used to tell us in the, or whether it's this big mass, either way, the concept is there's this phantom nucleus and these invisible electrons flying around it. But let's say all we can see are the electrons, and we can only imagine what this phantom nucleus really is. In Hebrew, the word I just mentioned, Gog, phantom, imaginary, fantasy, those are all meanings of gimmeling. Gimmeling around the phantom nucleus. So if we could identify the electrons, but let's say each electron is pointing at the real true essence of what it is, this invisible, unutterable Alef is, say, the nucleus. So I'm going to read some definitions. This is the meaning, the definition of the word paleo, like paleo, Zipur, Zamra. Translated simply Paleo Songbird. The word paleo, Pe Lamed Aleph Vav. Well, Lamed Aleph means no, not, or non. Pe is a mouth that opens. So I could say there's something about something that isn't open or doesn't open or hasn't opened, paleo. Pe can also be a mouth, but Pe Lamed, then look at Pe Lamed, Tav Pe Lamed Hey, Pe Lamed Lamed, Pe Lamed Yod, and Nun Pe Lamed. These are all the considerations. Covered, hidden, marvelous, wonderful, beyond description. Distinguished, special, extraordinary, discriminated, different, difficult, miraculous, and ancient. Pe Lamed, discuss, argue, debate. Pepper, it's where you get the word falafel. Unsavory, of course, a falafel is savory. But unsavory means you got to put salt on it because it's unspiced. Foolish, unsalted, tasteless. But it's also Tav Pe Lamed Hey, tefillah is prayer par excellence. It's like the most noble thing you can say. The ultimate prayer. It's also tefillah. Pe Lamed Lamed, to pray, to invoke as a judge. So if you go to court of law, sometimes you'll hear attorneys pray to the judge. Oh, I pray that you would do such and such. Because prayer isn't just to a deity, it's to a Elohim, it's to a higher authority where you're invoking a request. It also means to search, examine, or scrutinize, which is what you're supposed to do in the court of law, investigate a certain situation and make a determination about it, which is a call for judgment. Who's the criminal? Who's the one who's being accused that's really not. So it's Pe Lamed Yod, and then Nafal, Nun Pe Lamed, like Nephilim, means to fall, overthrow, or defeated. So the question is, well, that's what the word paleo means, all these things I just read, but what's it referring to? What is the thing which is covered, hidden, marvelous, wonderful, beyond description? Distinguished, special, extraordinary, discriminated means it's not like anything else. It's completely in a field of its own. Kadosh would be a synonym, but it's difficult, miraculous, ancient, different. It could be discussed about, searched, examined, and it's calling for some kind of judgment of overthrow of who's the criminal. And that's all the word paleo. It means paleo, but what's it referring to? What is paleo? Now, here's the word Zipur. Morning, birdie, tweet, chirp, songbird. But it's also the most vital part, the greatest treasure, the pupil of your eye. braided, encircled, spiral, wound around, turn, cohort, company of soldiers. It's kind of like the president surrounded by the Secret Service type of a concept. Pressed together, crowded. It's kind of the motif of these shield spirals, crowded with all these words around, around, and around. What's it referring to? That which encircles, enriches, makes more valuable, like braiding hair as a style, or putting ribbons and braided rope. Just the right moment. That's the word Zippor. Capricious, jumping goat, butterfly, giddy. Hidden, Zadi Pei means hidden. This is Zadi Pei Vav Resh. Pei Vav Resh means fruitful, like puree, purim, annul, violate, and fertility. What is that? That's what the word means, but what's it referring to? Okay, the word Zimra, it means singing, pruning, like trimming plants, like a gardener, and it means to go out to harvest the choice fruits. If you have a tree, say a fig tree full of fruit, you look for the one where the figs are soft and dark colors. It's like, yeah, not the green ones. You let those stay on the tree. You pick the choice fruits. So picking the best is Zimra, singing, pruning, picking the best fruit, that which is cut off, which is the best thing. It also means a jumping or bouncing animal, like a goat, a deer, or a kangaroo. But Zimmer, Zion, is that weapon that means to cut off or make exclusive, or to identify in particular. Mem Reshe means to be bitter, but it can also mean of authority. Mem can be the place of, or the condition of, reshness, the place of authority, the guy who holds the weapon, the Zion. So there's these different ways to read it. Now, if I put these all together, and I'm putting together the definitions of these three words, meaning paleo songbird, paleo, Zippor, and Zimra. And I'm saying we're going to look at these like these electrons. What's the nucleus? Okay, so let me consolidate this. This is the electrons pointing at what nucleus? Unusual, debatable, hidden, wonderful, extraordinary. Greatest treasure, most vital, majestic, perfect timing, like the morning, spiraling and circling, protected, hidden source of productivity. The rebellious are removed, the chosen are authorized. What's it referring to? I could say it's referring to the Alef Tov, but what's the Alef Tov referring to? The truth? The concept of love, the concept of life, the Torah? What's the Torah? The Torah is a bunch of stories where truth is embedded, hidden, and it's something that needs to be searched. It's debatable. There's different translations, but what is the Torah? The Torah's instructions. Instructions about what? The Torah, do this, do that. See, and I tried to sit here a little bit yesterday and was trying to ponder this. And it's like, okay, what's the Torah about? What's the paleo about? What's the Zippor and the Zimra about? It's about the reality, I think. The reality of what? Who is Elohim? Why are we here? Where did this place come from? Who am I? And where's this going? Who is Elohim? Who am I? Oh, that's Alef. Whether he's the Alef or I'm the Alef, he gave me an Alef and I'm in this bet place. Why are we here? To Gimel. Where's this going? Well, if that's Aleph Bet Gimel, where's it going? It's to the Tav. So through these different hoops or gates or hurdles of all the other letters. So I can just in my own locked mind, locked into this rut of the alphabet. I'm not making the alphabet sacred per se. I mean, it kind of is. The alphabet isn't Elohim, but it's certainly a device, a tool, an agent that he made. So's a prophet, so's Yeshua, so's, hey, is he God or is he a prophet of God? And it's like, okay, now you get the Jews and the Muslims and the Christians all fighting each other for the sake of identifying what those meanings of words are. I'm not trying to deify the alphabet. But if I look at John 1:1, I could say that in its pure essence, Elohim equated deification to the real meaning of the letters of the alphabet when he said, if we can say this, that word is Elohim and is with Elohim. Yeah, it's the bet of Elohim, and is the Aleph of Elohim is this word. And if the word is the alphabet, what I'm saying is that I'm a human being. I'm an Adam having logical, reasonable thoughts about what he made, and he stuck me here. Is that a crime? Is that a sin for me to do that? Or are we supposed to do that? And I know people have spoken against this type of study of engaging, and all I'm trying to do is say, if this thing that we're trying to identify is the greatest treasure, most vital part of my existence, of my having a consciousness, is to realize the majesty. What is this thing I'm looking at? The alphabet, no, it's what the alphabet is about, is what's described by the alphabet. So somehow it's got to be the essence of Elohim. It's somehow him that's not him, because he can't be defined. It's somehow every one of these three words, Paleo, Zephur, and Zamra, is about the real Aleph, if it could be put into words. Well, that's what the alphabet is also. So it's kind of like that. Well, what's eriktology? Well, the word erik, ayin resh kaf, ayin resh kaf. Ayin, weigh, measure, balance precisely, determine exactly, look well, calculate, investigate, research. It's stuff he told us to do. That's just what we humans do. Well, in order to do that, we have to eat, we have to be safe and warm and clothed and mobilized, and so everything else in life conducts the occasion where we can study this stuff. It looks like to me, and this is the greatest thing to put your mind towards doing, your mind and your time. But what is it? It seems to me that it's the design and the pattern of how things were built to work, which means how they function successfully. So when Israel does that collectively, Yod Het Dalet Ichad, Confederation of the 12 tribes, which is making his great name Kadosh, Ezekiel 36:23, because we've been making a halal, like Ezekiel 34 and previous to chapter verse 23 in Ezekiel 36. We've been making his great name. But see, his name is not just how do you pronounce the four letters. It's name, fame, renown, reputation. What's all that? He's the guy that invented this place. He's the guy that put all this stuff together. His great genius, which is also Mem Gimel, I think it's Yod Aleph Nun, Magion. I think it's a word. The incredible mind is also the Gimmeling. What he made, what he built, what he caused to exist. And it's all seems to be focused around the dynamic relationship between him and his people, which is a fractal extension of between father and son, between Ab and Ben. Hence, Aleph, Bet, Nun, the word for stone, the stone that comes and hits the feet and knocks down the statue, which takes out all the kingdoms of the world, is that stone. It's like, yeah, but those kingdoms thought that they were going to shut down the internet, and thought they were going to invade the land, and they thought that they were going to inject everybody, and they thought that they were going to, yeah, they had big plans in their head of gold. But when that stone hit the feet, they weren't doing anything, because it's a statue. Can't run, can't even wrestle with his arms. It's a pretense. It's a formidable figment. The only reality is Yahuwah and his relationship with Israel. And when we finally get on board with that and make his, or exclaim, or wrap our heart around his Shem Kadosh, it sets up this vibe, this frequency, because he said, don't fear, but just imagine everything I said was true. Well, as I'm picturing that everything he said was true, am I putting out a certain resonant frequency, which is then affecting the whole universe, which is affecting everything? Like the cymatics, like the Chladni study? Tesla said everything goes back to frequency, and 3, 6, and 9, the combination of those numbers. And it's like, why that? There's that whole solfeggio tone thing. And what I'm saying is that everything that seems to work, if you have the right frequency, your cells will cooperate and people get healed, or supposedly everything works if you have the right frequency of your cells vibrating. And if we have the wrong theology, the wrong doctrine, the wrong belief, the wrong fear, the wrong expectation, we're not vibrating right. And if you change the vibration of a cell, it turns into something else. Is that the way he built this place? So if we had the right calendar, the right pronunciation, the right frame of mind, the right frame of heart, would us being on the right page, as it were, cause the earth to produce, like he said in Ezekiel 38? Or does he have to push that button in the heavens and make it so on the face of the earth, no matter what, in spite of us? Or is it in collaboration with us? If we determined to believe what Yahuwah Zavot, the Elohim of Israel, said to Israel, and all 12 tribes, and remember there was 12 different stones, there are different names, and so it's Yichad, not Achad, and there's an allowance of variegation that's still okay. Cultural differences between the tribes. If we were doing what he said to do, is that going to affect the land and affect the animals? Is it the case? He says, there's no wild animals that are going to harm you. You can sleep in the woods. If what? If we believe the right thing and have the right thoughts, don't fear, trust him. Is he going to shut the mouth of the lion like he did with Daniel? Or, and I'm not saying he didn't, but was it Daniel's confidence in him that shut the mouth of those lions? Was it an angel? Well, it's a messenger. How does it all work? I don't know how it works, but all I'm saying, what if we could read into the story and imagine that our thoughts, our emotions, our behavior were agents of effect? That's what a malach is. An angel is literally an agent of effect, taking the intention of Elohim and bringing it to the earth and making it manifest. Well, what if we didn't? Remember, Yeshua said, didn't I say you were Elohim? It's like, what? When did you say that? What are you talking about, man? How does this place work? Well, what if we could look at these words, Paleo, Zephor, Zamra, and say it all is identifying how does this place work, with which is this phantom nucleus? How would you describe what that is with a Hebrew word? Well, they're interesting. If you look at the word takon, tav, kaf, vav, nun, it means planning, designing, arrangement, disposition, quality, character, proportion, and astronomic, which is the way the stars in the heavens are laid out. Tav, that's tav, kaf, vav, nun. Derivative tav, kaf, nun, weigh, examine, estimate, regulated, arranged, fixed, meted out, contents, the measurement and the fixed amount of those contents of something, program, like a software program, or like when you go to a theater presentation, they hand you a program, this is the way it's going to go, that type of a program, like a storyboard, like a comic strip. Here's something like a laying out, it looks like the alphabet letter sequence. This is all Tav, Kaf, Nun, Takan. Tav, Kaf, Lamed, which is right next to it in the dictionary, see your eyes happen to bump into the thing around it, means end, purpose. You ever think about, why is the sky blue? Oh, he made it blue. Well, yeah, but why? What is blue? Well, the word blue in Hebrew is techilit. Other way to say the word blue, but that's one, techal, techilit, sky blue. Yeah, but when is the sky blue? It's different colors of blue. Tav, Kaf, Lamed. Well, Tav can be a prefix letter, and Kaf, Lamed is the word that means all. It also regards the Torah, right? According to the Mishkan pattern, the altar of sacrifice, the barbecue grill. Lines of instruction, Kaf, like a hand, open hand. We write lines, maybe the Oriental, maybe you write vertical, either way, lines of instruction. And Lamed is a shepherd's staff, or it means teach and learn. To call literally means end, purpose. sky blue, completeness, perfection, boundary, ultimate limit, finality. Tav, Kaf, Lamed, Yod, Lamed, taking the third letter, making it the fourth, means musical score. Well, a good musical score to a film, man, or a play changes everything. You can have the wrong music, but if you have just the right music, I mean, music is an enhancement, a spice that changes the whole world. The way something is apprehended, is visualized, and for David to be able to play on his harp and the spirit of madness left the king, you hear just the right music with a piece of film, and it's transcendental. Why is the word for musical score takalil? Takalit, aim, purpose, intention. Well, that's a synonym with reshayan, which is also evil. So to have an evil inclination is reshayan, but to just have an aim or a purpose, like the word teruah, like Yom Teruah, the blowing of trumpets, that's resh vavayan, also means aim, purpose. What's your intention? So either your intention is evil to bring harm and calamity, like Gog swarming in, or your intention is to be Yahweh's people that he's always hoped for and wanted, that he's allowing us to be. Tav, Kaf, Lamed, Yod, Tav, Yod, Vav, Tav, a big long word. It's all prefix and suffix. Purposefulness and teleologist. How do you telegraph? What's the logical word of communication? Teleologist. It's the alphabet. So this one phrase, Tav, Kaf, Nun, happens to be used, it says, in Ezekiel 28:12, but also in Ezekiel 43:10. Well, Ezekiel 43:10, hey, that happens to be the exact verse we were going to look at, that we'll look at more next week. But here's what it says in English: You, son of man, tell the house of Israel about the temple, and let them be ashamed of their iniquities, and calculate the temple's design. Calculate the temple's design. Well, the word temple here is in brackets, so it doesn't say calculate the temple's design, it says calculate the design. But we just read that the word design is Tav, Kaf, Vav, Nun, or Tav, Kaf, Nun. Calculate the design, takon the takon. So if we look at this, the way it's written, Atah ben Adam, Hagad et bit. Well, Hagad, that's like the word Haggadah, which is to tell a story, a fable, a myth, a movie, a logical, analytical procedure. Hey, Gimel Dalet. Gad, God, Gimel Dalet. Fortune and luck. Gad, remember, he was a troop which invaded and stole the choice fruits. You have to plug all these things in. He's saying there's a story of raiding and stealing and promise and defense. I mean, all these things are wrapped up somehow in Hagad. Alef Tav, Bet Israel. Well, Bet Israel, house of Israel, but Bet also means taught, trained, and domesticated. There's something in the story of Israel that has to do with being the raider or getting raided, having offensive versus defensive, of having protection or having no protection. David was promised success, and he went out militarily and wiped out all his neighbors. But yet, it's Yahuwah that determines whether we have victory or not. Well, if we're his people walking in his ways, that goes back to Leviticus 26 and Deuteronomy 28. It goes on to say, Alef Tav Habet. Habet, well, they translated it the temple, but temple is also the Mikdash, the place of the Kadosh. It's also Mekadem, the place of positioned right here. It's also translated Hayakal, the place of power and the capacity to contain it all. So the word Hayakal is translated as either temple or palace, but here it's the Bet and Vav Yod Kaf Lamed. Well, there's power and capacity to contain it all. Mem Lamed, but that's translated as let them be ashamed, because Kaf Lamed Mem literally means to be put to shame and humiliated, like Yeshua on the cross. Dead, thrown in the grave, Kaf Lamed. See, Yod Kaf Lamed Mem, hey, that's 4 letters in the alphabetic sequence. Het, Tet, Yod, Kaf, Lamed, Mem, Nun. So whenever you see a letter like that, a word, what does that mean? How do you read it? Is the Yod the prefix, or is the Mem the Lamed Mem, meaning to them, belonging to them? Is that the suffix? Kaf Lamed is at the heart. Those are the 2 letters right in the middle of the alphabet, and that means all. Power, authority to contain it all, like a bucket, like a pail, like the vault. What's he telling us here? And it says Mem, Ayin, Vav, Nun, Vav, Tav, Yod, Hey, Mem. Start at the back end. Hey, Mem, that means them or theirs. Tav, Yod, I have or I will. Vav, Tav, that's the plural of Ayin, Vav, Nun. And it says, look at Ayin, Vav, Vav, Nun in the dictionary, and Mem is the prefix, means the time or the place that it belongs to. And Ayin, Vav, Nun is iniquity. Something about the stuff that you have wrong, whether you did it intentionally or unintentionally. Ayin, Vav, Nun basically, I think, is intentional. But then it says Vav, Mem, Dalet, Dalet, Vav. Well, Mem, Dalet, or Mem, Dalet, Dalet is where we get the word for mode or tailor-made, or somehow like a fit garment. So because of your iniquity, you're wearing your life. Change how you do it, and everything changes. Start doing righteousness instead of injustice, and everything changes. We wear, our ways are brought back upon us. That's the root of that word. Then it says Alef Tav hyphen with Tav Kaf Nun Yod Tav, Takanit. Well, that's the word, the design, the temple's, calculate the temple's design. So we're going to look at these verses next week. Ezekiel 43 verses 10, 11, and 12. He goes on to read 11. If they become ashamed of all that they have done, if they become ashamed, well, how can you become ashamed unless you tell somebody where you have it wrong? Hence, we have to look at what we believe and say, that's not true. So if I hear a preacher on the radio saying something, and I thought, well, I've heard this my whole life, I've heard it 10,000 times, read it in books, listened to it, sang it in songs, and it's like, but that's bad theology. That's bad doctrine. That's false. That's not accurate. It doesn't esteem Yahuwah or his Torah. And I have to be able to know how to figure out the difference so that I can become ashamed of all I've done, then make known to them the form of the temple and its design. But see, it doesn't say temple. It's either Mikdash, how you call them, Mikdem, or Bet. But see, all that doesn't have to do with that building necessarily. It's Yahuwah's construct of the entire universe, his kingdom, how it operates. Its exits and its entrances, that means what goes in and what goes out, or why things happen, and its forms, all its laws, its designs, its teachings, write all them down before their eyes. That means so that they can understand, because the word ayin is weigh carefully, balance exactly, calculate, determine precisely, a meticulous detail of understand every little thing, so that, now here's the upshot, this is what we're supposed to be doing, they may safeguard its entire form and all its rules and fulfill them. We're supposed to be doing something. And this is at the time of the third temple. Then he goes on to say in verse 12, this is the teaching regarding the temple. The top of the mountain, its entire boundary all around shall be most holy. Behold, this is the teaching regarding the temple. Now, just like with Hasanah, hey, Samach Nun, hey, when you have a phrase, a statement, and then another phrase, like the letter hey, shining on something, like Nagan. Nun, Gimel, Nun, it's like 2 bookends, this, here, behold, hey, Nun, hey. Okay, here we have, this is the teaching regarding the temple. Saviv, Saviv, Kadosh, Kodashim. This is the teaching regarding the temple. So it's, what the heck is Saviv? Samach Bet Yod Bet. Well, it's translated all around. Well, that's like the spiral, around and around. Saviv, Saviv. But like Aviv, Alef Bet Yod Bet is the gateway. Bet Bet is the gateway to Alef Bet, which is father, but it's also youth, vigor, verdure, springtime, when spring busts open. And just like the almond that we talked about yesterday, it means industrious and diligent, which is the first tree to put out those blossoms. Springtime, okay, I'm right there. Okay, so that attitude with Samik. But what's Samik? Samik's an engineered structure. It's the menorah. It's the light within the meeting tent that only the priests were allowed to come into. In the menorah, the table of showbread, the altar of incense, then there was a veil, and then the Ark of the Covenant. But in that space with the table of showbread and the altar of incense, this menorah, and if the Samik is like a mast of a ship with the yardarms, a tree trunk with the branches, the vertical, the horizontal, the backbone with the ribs, all this stuff is the Samik, and the bet is the entrance to that. It's said all around. Well, if you take a menorah with curved arms and you lay it down on, it looks like ripples around a bullseye. What's the most vital part that everything else is pointing to? The takon of Yahweh. What did he design? What did he plan? That's the meaning, just simply translated, calculate the design. Something about calculating the design and coming to the conclusion that, rats, I was misled, I was deceived and beguiled, like Eve in the garden for 50 years of my life. And then it's taken another 20 years just to figure out what the heck, how does this work? When will I ever get a chance to actually engage the thing? It's like you spend your whole life building a car, then you're too old to get in the car and drive it. I could drive it down the driveway maybe. It's like, no, when do we get to play with this thing? When do we get to do the stuff of the kingdom? Well, is that Ezekiel 39? Is that Ezekiel 43? But that's in front of us. It's not the end of the world. We're just getting the thing going here. Is that where we're at? So we're going to look at through verse 12 next week. But when he says, Saviv, Kadosh, Kodashim, round the round, the engineered structure of the Samik is the beginning, the opening, where the Kadosh matters become the Kodashim, because the Holy of Holies, that place was called the Kadosh Kodashim, and that's where the Ark of the Covenant was, and that's where the tablets of the Ten Commandments were put in, and Aaron's rod that budded, and the jar of manna, which speaks of complete provision, and the authority of the Kohen HaGadol, the high priest, Aaron's job, associated to those 10 Devarim, which is what Yahweh said. So something about understanding the engineered structure of the alphabet, which is the takon, which goes back to, because Adam and Hua didn't believe, they chose not to believe what Yahuwah said. They chose to believe that which what looked pleasant and delightful and shiny, mesmerizing, enchanting, the Nachash, the Nachash's beguilement has spiced the Tabal, but see, it's all about how do you read the words? Yes, these words mean Paleo songbird, but they also are describing this very thing that's being talked about in Ezekiel 43. And it also goes back to saying, where's the original problem? Back in the garden. And is that what he's talking about in 39:1? Or is that where he's talking about, Prince of Meshach and Tubal? Does it say that Gog was the prince, the head of Meshach and Tubal? Or is he saying, figure out what Yahweh said and do it? Correct the text. You've inherited a bunch of words from different languages and you have no idea what it's about. But they all point to the truth, that they all point to the Paleo Zippur Zimra. If you can hear that song, if you can appreciate the truth, which I personally believe this study is about, which I can say, gosh, thank you, Yahweh, for letting us see this, because if we weren't looking for the truth in the words, we'd never see it, and none of this stuff would ever make any sense. But it does make sense. Anyway, one last thing, just for what it's worth, is a couple weeks ago, I had this large version of this, just called it the hat band, but it was a little too big for a hat. And so I remade it a little smaller version. And I think the curve is a little bit off, but I was going to make this available, and where it says, Kadosh Ani, I am Kadosh, unto Yahuwah, which is to say set apart, special, unlike any other, unto Yahuwah, my Elohim, Elhi Zavot. And remember, Kadosh LaYahweh, just these three words, Kadosh LaYahweh, were written on the headband of the high priest, not wanting to, written in gold, not wanting to copy that exactly, but the frame of mind of saying, I'm Kadosh LaYahweh, he's my Elhi Zavot. The one who causes, one who, like sticking a knife handle in, is Nun Zadi Bet, but Zadi Bet is to establish as a fixed. Remember, Jeremiah 23, is any of them been exposed to my mystery? Exposed to my mystery, Ahmad Basodi, but Ahmad is exposed like column standing up, and the Sod is the foundation that holds the column in place. This stuff is the Ahmad Basodi. What else is there? It's the tone of the universe. It's what all this stuff is about. And it's embedded in understanding these 22 letters, and it's retained by the gospel narrative of Yeshua coming from heaven to earth, being crucified, entombed 3 days and 3 nights, rising from the dead, ascending, coming back. It's retained in that story. Why don't the Jews see that? Why don't the Christians see the validity of the Torah, the Moedim? If they saw it, they'd keep the Moedim, wouldn't they? If they don't keep the Moedim, there's no 2 sticks becoming 1 in his hand. That's what that is. Okay, anyway, we're at end of time, and it's time to quit. So thank you, Yahweh. And this shirt I have, there's teeth in these. This is the shirt I was wearing at the. I'm just saying, the teeth of El Shaddai is the teeth that he's going to eat Gog with, Magog, by feeding them to the birds. Birds will eat them. I'm just saying, there's all these different little graphic motifs. And one other thing I wanted to bring up, where did I put it? Here, a friend of mine up in Montana. Just I'm trying to encourage people to mess around with graphics. That's all. Shema, Shomer, Asab. Yod He Vav He. Alef Vav Tav, but the Vav is like a Dalet, but the Vav is also like this menorah. It's like blue, purple, red, and white. I'm just saying that, to play around with graphics, it's like to wrap your mind and heart around stuff he said, and to wear it boldly as saying, this is my identity, sets up these, projects frequency, which should affect the entire realm, the entire universe. This isn't just us doing a little study. Anyway, thank you, Yahuwah. Thank you for calling us to be your people, calling us back out of the blindness and ignorance and the dispersion, and be glorified in us. And thank you very much. Shem Yeshua, amen. I have to hit the stop record.